house. Welcome back, everybody. Hope you had a wonderful break. So let's jump into introducing our next speaker. So I am very excited about this. So I am here to introduce to you Beth Rattner. So you may recognize Beth as the former executive director of the Biomimicry Institute, where she worked for over 12 years to build up the organization's product development, fundraising, and marketing efforts. She's now free as a bee. And prior to all of this, for the past 2 decades, Beth has been working on the synthesis of cradle-to-cradle, circular economy, and biomimicry. It's a pretty juicy combination. I think there's a couple of you here that might like that. And a formative part of her sustainability journey was working with William McDonough and Michael Braungart on the Upcycle, which is the sequel to Cradle to Cradle, where she helped to co-found the Cradle to Cradle Products Innovation Institute and became its first executive director and then vice president. More recently, you can find her showing how the waste equals food paradigm can come to life by studying biological models of decomposition as the building blocks for next generation biocompatible materials. And as ever, asking the bold question, like, can we use the existing mountains of toxic clothing waste to subsidize the healthier, safer new materials world that we all want? Beth Rattner believes that biomimetic design in products, cities, and agriculture can bring about a new level of resilience to our economy and ecosystem, which in turn spur new levels of social equity. Beth is also a dear friend and is in fact a pivotal character in the wild and winding origin story of Learn Biomimicry. And it is my absolute honor to welcome her here today. So, dear Beth, welcome to the Confluence, and over to you.
Thank you, Jess. I really appreciate that so much. It is a big honor to be here. This community means a lot to me and has for many, many years. You mean a lot to me, Jess, Claire, Alistair, everybody is who formed Biomimicry South Africa and then Learn Biomimicry. Claire was a teacher to me, and I think she's watching us now, making sure that everything goes according to plan. The talk I want to give, I just wanted to clarify the program I'm going to talk a little bit about. Mostly I'm going to talk about biomimicry at the systems level. I can't see any of you right now because of my technical errors. So if you have, if for some reason my Wi-Fi is wonky, just please jump in and let me know. The program designed for decomposition, which became designed for transformation, still lives at the Biomimicry Institute. And if you have any questions, be sure to reach out to them about it. But all of the materials that we created starting in 2019 exist for free on that website. It's d4t.biomimicry.org, I think. And then resources section. All right, let's get started. Who knows what this is? You can't say Earth. Oh, and I can't see the screen, so you have to actually yell them out if you're popcorning. What are we looking at?
Sand. Sand moving from the Sahara.
Very good. Technically, we're looking at dust from the Sahara as it migrates its way to the Amazon. This was Lake Megachad, the site of Lake Megachad, 7,000 years ago. It was bigger than all of the Great Lakes in the United States combined. And when it dried up, all of the aquatic life and skeletons, those became gravel, which ultimately became dust and diatomaceous earth. And when the storms come through twice a year, that dust is actually lighter than sand. So that's what gets swept up. Maybe some sand too, but you were right to say that it was sand from the Sahara. This is an image from NASA's Calypso satellite. They did earlier this year, they had done a longitudinal study, a 3D model of that dust. And this is what it looks like. It's 182 million tons making its way in a migratory fashion. I think it loses about 50 million tons over the Atlantic. And then 28 million tons lands in the Amazon basin. And diatomaceous earth is really, really rich in any verbal, again, I can't see, so you have to guess out loud. What's diatomaceous earth really rich in? Come on, we have gardeners.
Silica.
Silica, yes. What else? From a, like, think about a fertilizer.
Carbonates.
Nitrogen.
Nitrogen.
Phosphorus.
Phosphorus. Phosphorus mostly, and nitrogen as well, of course. All of those answers are right, but specifically it's phosphorus. And so the Amazon does not look like the Amazon without the Sahara Desert. That is, in essence, a systems lens on how the Earth moves. We are moving particles as well, but this is what we're moving, which is microplastics and microfibers. At the end of the day, we live in an entropic universe. Physics is real. It will move a nutrient or it will move trash. It is agnostic. And the sooner we understand that we've been trying to fight physics by the way that we have take back programs, or we think that we can recycle our way sort of out of the petrochemical mess that we've made, the sooner we might wake up to an alternative. A lot of people think that, a lot of smart people, let me qualify it. A lot of smart people think that, so what? So what that there's a lot of microplastics. You know that phrase, there will be more plastic than fish by 2050 in the ocean? It's because of microplastics that are actually settling to the ocean floor. If I had my speaker notes, I could tell you exactly how much, but I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of like 140 million tons. But someone can fact check me on that one. It's an insane amount that settles just to the ocean floor. This was a study done in Eastern China. Microplastics are affecting our clouds because plastic, as you all know from my personal experience, is hydrophilic, right? So it's attracting water. And with that attraction of water, it's also attracting toxins at the same time. So it is actually literally changing both the hydrologic cycle and also what gets rained down in that hydrologic cycle. Nanoplastics, microplastics are also affecting our fruit and vegetables. It's reducing the root structure, the cellular wall structure. It's reducing the nutritional profile of our food. Not so fun fact, carrots and apples are the worst. It's also affecting our hearts. So this was just released, I think during the summer. March, actually, in spring. In patients who had plaque, if you had microfibers and microparticles in your plaque, you had a much higher chance of heart attack or stroke, death, than if you just had plaque alone. So let me go back. It's not nothing. It is affecting us, and it's affecting the health of the entire world. And yet, it's the number one objective in the circular economy. McKinsey recently called for $100 billion investment in recycled plastic as like the silver bullet for at least getting plastic to be operationally neutral. I think it's a mistake. Now that I'm not the Biomimicry Institute ED, I'm going to be super bold in my opinions. I think that recycled plastic is just is a waste of time. And we're seeing increasing levels of toxicity that are emerging. I don't know if you guys saw The Atlantic this morning. There was a cover story. It said, throw away your black spatula from your kitchen. That's because just, I think a week ago, they released a report in Chemosphere about the amount of flame retardants that are in our black plastic. We all have like black plastic utensils, or in your takeout food, black plastic that they say is like recycled plastic. It's coming from the electronic sector. And the electronic sector had to put in brominated fire, or just had to put in fire retardants in general into their material. So when your device heats up, it doesn't explode, or if it does explode, it doesn't catch fire. So for a liability reason, it's in there. That was the cheapest plastic. So when recycled plastic comes through, black plastic is always up at the top. It's a giant whack-a-mole game that we're playing, right? So over here, we think in silos, right? So we think over here about liability. I was a lawyer back in the day, so I really understand this impulse in companies. We don't want to get sued. Let's put fire retardants in our stuff. Oh, we want to be a circular economy company. Let's recycle plastic. Is a bad game. Even before the recent Black Plastic report, a year ago, they found hundreds of toxic chemicals in our recycled plastic. And it's just by virtue of the process of repelletizing plastic. So on this planet, there is a net. It is a It is the net that keeps everything going. It is enzymes and bacteria. And if I had one thing to tell companies, I would say, forget designing for people, you're designing for bacteria and enzymes, because that's the only thing that's actually ultimately going to secure the longevity of the planet. Nature breaks things down in order to build them back up anew. And this is the engine that does that. So if this, biological net that we have across the planet doesn't recognize the thing that you're making, then it's not a nutrient. And we're seeing that. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the planetary boundaries. I assume everybody on this call is, but just for reference, we talk a lot about, of course, global warming, greenhouse gas, climate change. One of the areas that we're off the charts in is novel entities. And novel entities means the stuff the planet doesn't recognize, the stuff our bodies don't recognize. That's the microfibers and microplastics. So like Jess mentioned, I was executive director for Cradle to Cradle and there for a number of years. And I was on many stages and I'm like, don't worry, everybody, we can make all the stuff we want. We just have to have two cycles, two metabolisms. We have to have a technical metabolism and a biological metabolism. And if we keep these two separate and operational, we'll be fine. The problem is all of the toxicity that was actually being recycled in that technical cycle. And at the end of the day, we just have to remember that it's really just one cycle, a biological cycle. And maybe the technical cycle sits within it for a period of time. Maybe we recycle glass and metals and even some plastics. But whatever we do, we have to be cognizant of the fact that everything, as we put in the report, everything sheds and everything spreads. And if you're going to pretend that it doesn't, we'll just get sicker and sicker. So the project that we took on originally was asked back in 2019, was from the Loudest Foundation. And they said, if the fashion sector were going to operate like a healthy ecosystem, what would have to change? And I think because biomimicry has so many sexy stories around structural color and new ways of lightweighting materials and water repellency, I think they expect us to sort of come back with a litany of those sort of guidance points for industry. But we said all of that is necessary, but the first stop is actually decomposition, because because the volumes are so enormous, we have to actually have a different mental model for how we think about our clothing. And I think, I'm not sure if it was this slide. Yeah, actually, let me go back for a second. I want to talk a little bit about volume for a second. I think we get distracted by volume. So on average, there's somewhere between 110 and 120 million tons of fiber made every year, which is a huge number if it's going to be problematic. It's not a huge number if it was beneficial. Estimates from people like Sonia Salmon out of UNC in North Carolina, she'll say that maybe 400, 500 million tons of cellulose are produced every year. If you look at chitin, it could be up in the trillions of tons, and chitin could be a replacement for plastic. So volume alone isn't actually the problem on this planet if, again, it fits in with that biological net of bacteria and enzymes. So we've designed poorly, and this is what I mean by we've designed poorly. In 2011, Alaska Airlines bought new uniforms for its flight attendants, and flight attendants have very specific needs. Like, people spill on you all the time, and you don't have time to iron your uniform, so it had to be wrinkle free. It had to be water repellent, stain repellent, fire retardants had to be on it as well. And they all got really sick within weeks of getting these new uniforms. They didn't think about it. And then by 3 years later, magically, after so many people literally started calling in sick and they couldn't staff their flights, they're like, let's just get rid of those uniforms. They didn't say a word to them. They just said, hey, we're issuing you new uniforms. But, and this is conjecture on my part, so don't call me, but I think the uniforms went on sale because then Delta, American, and 3 other airlines all bought the same new uniforms, and they all got sick. So Harvard did this study, and they found that 87 illnesses were directly attributable to those flame retardants, stain retardants, right, wrinkle-free coatings. we're choosing to make stuff that is literally making us sick. It's also affecting the amount of potable water we have. As you all know, there's about maybe 3% fresh water on the planet, 1% might be available to us. And this is what we're doing with it. I don't know if any of you have tie-dyed before, but you know it takes a lot of water to wash dye out. It's about a 200-to-1 ratio of water to dye. And this is what it looks like oftentimes. And of course, we just talked about microfibers. It's an astonishing number, and I don't like, God bless the people who actually counted, but your micro fleece sweatshirt, any micro fleece, anything is a problem, but in general, polyester. And cotton does too, and we can talk about cotton, the mercerization process of cotton, of course, the other, and if you're gonna actually still dye it and coat it in water repellents and stain repellents, cotton's not gonna be any better just because the base material is recognizable. So, right, it's a twofold process. What is your core constituent material, and what are you layering on top of it in terms of a coating and finish? And of course, that's the micro level. This is the macro level. This is a picture from the Atacama Desert in Chile, where we're getting about 60,000 tons of clothing every year that are being imported. And they can only sell about 20,000 tons. So 2/3 of it is landing here in the desert. And a few intrepid journalists started to take photos of it. And then magically the desert was put on fire and the clothing was gone. But it keeps just refilling because they really don't have any other options for what to do with it. So the problem is, again, just like the microplastics problem where circular economy is calling for, like, let's just recycle plastic. The same has been true in the textile industry, which is like, let's just recycle polyester. Global Fashion Agenda said that polyester was far and away the greenest fiber that was available, and that we should just be embracing that. And like ignoring, again, I'm going to have my opinions be really strong now because I don't represent an organization. They were ignoring sort of like how polyester came to be, and just saying that the loop of potential of polyester, especially durability of polyester, made it the greener fiber. And a lot of brands will tell you that their durability strategy is their sustainability strategy. And I guess that makes sense if you think about time, like life on the planet being within a very narrow sort of like window of time. But if you're looking at the larger horizon of how life evolves on this planet, yeah, those little cycles of durability mean nothing. And so I really believe that these recycled polyester challenges that Textile Exchange and other people have called for is good intentions that were, I think, underinformed by what the potential was instead. Most of the efforts that we see in this space and that we ran into time and time again in the pilot was all of these companies saying like, oh yeah, we know decomposition. We break things down all the time. We pull out the PET, we repelletize the PET, and then we resell it to the yarn manufacturers. But PET has a catalyst. So the way that it works is actually it relies on a heavy metal called antimony. And antimony was never designed to be worn next to our skin. So we get all excited and we're like, oh, plastic water bottles have become fiber, and now those fibers are actually reclaimed and now they're new pellets and I can make it again. Never paying attention to the toxicity profile of what we were putting into our bodies or onto our bodies. This is one of my favorite quotes by Janine, and I think it is far and away the North Star for biomimicry and for what we do. Life creates conditions conducive to life. A friend of mine likes this quote so much, he had it tattooed on his body. And I feel like if we would just apply this one lens to everything that I just talked about, we would all come to the same conclusion that recycling polyester, plastic, whatever it may be, is just not creating conditions conducive to life. It is not a nutrient that we're cycling. Nothing is getting better. Maybe it's less bad. Less bad is not the same as conditions conducive to life. It's a really different lens when you start to apply it that way. So what we did with the project, and again, I'm not part of the project anymore. I just want to say that like 5 times, but I know a lot about it because I led it. The first thing that we did is we recognized that we could tackle mixed waste, and most people don't want mixed waste. It's actually the one thing that in the recycling world it's almost always considered trash. It becomes stuffing, maybe for dog beds, waste to energy fodder sometimes, but nobody really wants to tackle the breakdown of mixed textile waste. So we said, okay, that's where we're going to start. And so we used enzymes actually to break apart the material and pull out the glucose first, because, and while getting glucose out of cellulose is nothing new, that's been done a long time, it is new to do it in this context, in a messy context when all of these fibers are commingled. And then with the material that wasn't pulled out into glucose, other products were being made, biochar, and actually the process of making into biochar removes the perfluorinated chemicals, removes the dyes. So we did not sort it ahead of time. We actually just like literally threw everything into a sequential enzymatic pathway. The glucose, of course, and also the gases can both be used toward making bacterial cellulose. We were able to pull off nitrogen, of course, as one of the gases. Let me say this. The first process was enzymatic to pull off the glucose. After that, we did use gasification. And you can use gasification or pyrolysis. It's a super interesting world when you start to divide the mix between the two. It tends to come down to temperature and what your and duration. But regardless, we were able to actually capture all of the gases. We worked with a university called Wageningen, and they are really advanced in this space. Those gases can also become PHA, which is actually a biodegradable plastic. So I have a lot of faith in PHA. Right now, you can't use PHA to make fibers. It's too brittle, but you can make buttons, you can make other stuff. And I think there's people working on making it into fiber anyway. The other thing that we did is we ran some of the gases through microalgae. And in that process, you actually get a whole new suite of new materials, beta glucans. And beta glucans can be used everything from a better organic fertilizer to a health supplement for the cardiovascular disease that you don't want if you have microfibers in your body. See, full circle. This is what the process started, pardon me, this is what the process looked like. And I'll tell you the good and the bad that came out of it, just to be totally transparent. The good is it was really great to learn that there were essentially a few key steps to this process. It's always going to come down to enzymatic hydrolysis, bacterial fermentation, gasifying what you can't use, at least right now, microalgae, and then you can get all this very cool biocompatible new material. So you can take waste and make it equal food for the next generation of products. The problem is it's super expensive. I mean, not cost effective at this point in time. And I thought a lot about that. And I think it comes down to the fact that as we know, and we saw this in the innovation program, it is not a level playing field out there. The petrochemical industry is subsidized to the tune of $7 trillion every year, maybe more by now. This was a year ago number, so it's at least $7 trillion. That's subsidized mostly by the US, Canada, and Australia. So it's very hard for novel technologies or competitive technologies to come up. Even though, again, if we took the bigger lens of looking at total cost, full cost accounting or ecosystem services, if we could monetize that, the numbers would start to work out. So our premise was, well, what if we actually started to help? What if we started to help others? Because I wrote this line for the report, the Nature Fashion Report, because I think it is true. It's ridiculous. Nobody did ever look at a barrel of oil and thought, that's what I want to wear tonight, right? That's the future of clothing. But because we've worked with petrochemicals for so long now, 100+ years, we can make it into anything. But just imagine if we actually had worked with cellulose and chitin, other proteins, glucose. If we had worked with that for the last 100 years, we would be leagues ahead. So, my perspective is we need to stop. And I'm not alone in that, right? There's a lot of people saying this is the end of oil. This is the end of the plastic sector. But there's still a lot of money being poured into this. So back to what I was thinking as a premise is, well, what if actually our process, and I didn't really give you a lot of stats, but there's a lot of stats around the incineration, and of course the landfilling, and then you saw the burdening that we're doing with all of the materials. What if that was actually turned into the mental mindset of a subsidy? And the people that I would like to subsidize would be the biomimics out there who are actually doing really cool stuff with these abundantly safe materials that are available on the planet. This is an image that Sparksel uses. They're a company that you may have heard of from Biomimicry Institute. They're using cellulose as their core material palette and creating structural color on top of it. So it's a powder-based application, but I don't know, a world that's safe for glitter would be a really good world. Similarly, I think it's now pronounced Superfy. It used to be Impossible Materials. They're replacing titanium dioxide also by using cellulose and imparting the sort of structure of the white beetle. So they can actually get that same white that we use for our powdered sugar, that we use for our sunscreens and our toothpaste, which we actually now know is carcinogenic. We can actually bring the glucose over to friends like Spintex, who are growing new proteins to create high performance fibers where they use 1,000 times less energy and the only byproduct is water. And I hope that you actually know all these examples, and maybe someone that it's already talked them through in more detail. But I just love the idea that the waste from what our process yielded in terms of new materials could actually help them. Because what if none of these biomimicry companies had to pay for their raw materials? What if they didn't have to pay for their glucose, right, or their bacterial cellulose? And then all of a sudden they have a leg up. We're the subsidy for them. Of course, there are millions of structures that have yet to be applied in the textile space, and beyond that, construction, etc. I think it's just a question of time. The future, to me, of biomimicry is this synthesis of biomimetic structures with abundant materials that the earth recognizes. And I think that this transitional technology period that we're in right now, where we're going to have to figure out the smartest and most elegant way, least polluting way of breaking down old stuff to make fodder for these new structures, is really what the job is that's ahead. So I'll leave you guys with this, the classic sort of biomimicry framing, which is, I think if we apply all elements, we think in terms of all three at once. So most of biomimicry has been like, I'm a good form story, or I'm a good process story, or maybe I'm a system story. The truth is all innovation should hit all three. And we should be talking about the role according to all three. So with that, I'll say thank you for listening and for being part of this journey. And I will take any questions or hear any comments.
Thank you. That was so phenomenally interesting and so powerful and so true, and just wow, man, that was so
I'm so glad you guys liked it. Thank you. I appreciate all the emoji love. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Beth. Really, yeah, we've got some great comments coming from here, from Paul saying, yo, from terror to hope. Well done, Beth. Yeah, I was also feeling that roller coaster. I think from my perspective, coming from a background working in the advertising industry, pushing retail and be like, yeah, buy more stuff, like, and an industry that I kind of backpedal the heck out of, like, this is so close to home and so powerful. And really, thank you for laying it out for us in such, plain language, and making it so easy for us to understand and see the complexities that lie within these things, but also just the opportunities. So unbelievable. Thank you.
I'm so happy. I'm so happy. Look, it's going to take some bravery, right? And I think that's what makes, the reason why I always loved biomimicry is because I felt like we could be brave because we had proof right in front of us of a system that works. And all we have to do, like every one of us, is just be brave and tell everybody, don't worry. Like you guys ever watched the Great British Baking Show? Right? Like someone like there's always a baker who like, I forgot the baking soda, and they're watching their cake not rise. And so, it's a half hour into it and they're losing time and they throw it away anyway and they start over. That is us, like, because they know they can't win. They cannot win with a flat cake, a bad cake, right? So we have to actually get to this point where we're brave enough to say, like, dang it, we made a mistake. We made a wrong turn. But there's but there's still time.
Amazing. Completely agree. So, Beth, I've got a couple of questions for you, if that's okay, from the
Sure,
audience.
please. Yeah.
We've got Raina Gould. Would you like to jump in with your question?
Yeah, sure. I'm wondering about your volume question, and if there's like a volume and toxicity measure, that would be really interesting. It's hard for me to conceptualize that textiles would get anywhere close to the volume of construction, roads, buildings, houses. So maybe it's a toxic. So how do you how do I think of this? How do I put this in terms of like what's causing harm to where, like in sort of a framework, contextualize it in a larger framework, I guess. Thank you.
Sure, Raina, that's a great question. Scientific American, I think 2 years ago, ran a cover story that showed that all that humans made now outweighed all of life on Earth, right? So we're at this moment where our footprint is no longer debatable. You add up, like you were just saying, Raina, like all of the roads, all the coffee mugs, all the printers, whatever it may be, like it weighs more than all life on the planet. So we have to think in terms of volume from that perspective. But again, the carrying capacity of the planet really comes down to a material palette question. And so if we can actually rethink it from that lens, then we'd be better off. I think that the reason that textiles was a good place for TBI Biomimicry Institute to start was because it's people aren't tackling it right now, whereas construction waste is at least beginning to get tackled, although not to the volumes and degrees necessary. But people, and I also believe, like I said, that it's something that should be fixable in our lifetimes. Roads are going to be harder. Like asphalt is asphalt, and maybe, of course, there are biomimetic solutions that are alternatives. But I think like mentally, we have to start with a place where we can make a win. And so that was really the impetus for it. But at the end of the day, you're right, and it all matters.
Amazing, thank you. I'd like to introduce the next speaker as your number one fan, Aqua Eddie. I know you must have just been frothing in this call. You must have been so excited. So Eddie, over to you for your question.
Yes, it's true. I'm trying to contain myself. I'm trying to behave. Could you just talk a little more about the microalgae? And
Yeah.
in the chat, give me some references about it. I want to drill down and learn more about it. I'm doing work with Purdue University now.
Yep.
We're taking microalgae and making fish feed out of it.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
no, and I want to know more what you're doing, because it sounded like that was an extra step that gave you better materials.
Really, thanks for the question. There are actually, like I said, there's some resources available specifically about the microalgae work that we did. That was done in the Rotterdam pilot with Circle Economy. But I will, if not right now, then I will make sure that Jess has and Alistair have all of the links to that content. But really briefly, so we wanted to break everything down enzymatically. Like we didn't even want to use gasification or pyrolysis because for obvious reasons, like it's high heat, it's 800-degree temperatures, like nobody wants that. Wax worms break down plastic. The problem is that the assignment that we were given is what can be scaled now with an eye toward the future of what we wanted to do. So given current infrastructure, high heat was actually one of the best options for dealing with some very toxic, yucky stuff, right? So the microalgae work came about when we were just like searching for what are all the things we're going to do with like methane and nitrogen and CO2 and carbon monoxide that are coming off of this gasification process. And microalgae was actually one of the things that was like very tolerant, of course, of the CO2. And then actually another technology that our innovation team knows about, Ruby Technologies, they were really interested in the methane and the methanol. So really it was about, and this is the other thing that biomimicry does that like standard commercialization processes our industry doesn't do. Like industry's always like, I need one problem, one answer. Nature doesn't work that way. Like when a tree decomposes, lots of things will eat it. we wanted that same mental model. Lots of things should be eating the outputs of this process. So that's how microalgae really came into the work. And yeah, I'm happy to share sort of the name of the entity that actually ran those tests for us.
Thank you.
Sure.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Beth. I think we've got another question here from Alistair.
Alistair has a
Beth.
question? I thought Alistair only had answers. Go ahead, Alistair.
Yeah, I'm all about questions. What a beautiful presentation. It's so nice to be caught off guard and just sort of, ready to rethink plastics and polyester. So thank you so much for incredible presentation. My question is what is your advice to sort of young aspiring biomimics that are interested within, playing within the textile space? How might they get involved? Where do they get involved? How do they get started with their first sort of biomimicry project? And are there any sort of is there any low-hanging fruit for these sort of biomimics to be?
Great question. We actually created a map. I don't know if it's still on the website. I can check in with the team about it, but we had created a map of all of the different programs worldwide that are practicing biomimicry in universities. And actually the Launchpad would be a really good place within TBI to look. Finding a university partner nearby is always the right place to start. TU Delft has some great programs if you're in the Netherlands, of course, University of Akron here in the US, but there's Freiburg in Germany. So there's some real leaders in this space. But the main piece of advice I would give is exactly what I said at the end, which is use abundant natural materials as your innovation point. There is some bad biomimicry out there. Like, we don't have to talk about, we don't have to throw any shade, but there's some bad biomimicry out there using the structure of the nasturtium leaf, but using C6 and C8, like perfluorinated chemistry, to achieve it. And then they oh, we are the most water repellent surface on the planet. Like, yeah, and you would kill the nasturtium if you actually applied it. So right, this kind of, again, siloed thinking that, oh, I have a biomimetic structure, but I use poor material classes. The emoji thing is fun. It is kind of like having an audience. Yeah, so I would say start with your material palette first. Another great place to look, Mary Oxman, who I love, out of MIT. She's just been doing some really interesting things on sort of like the art and architecture side, now using 3D printing and using chitinase, or chitosan rather, and cellulose and pectin to make these phenomenal structures. And I think that art plays a really important role here too. If you can see something dramatically gorgeous that is using technology like 3D printing, but with these, again, very abundant materials, it starts to change mindsets. So I would say do something that's sort of demonstrably different.
Amazing. I couldn't agree with more with that. I think that there's something that's so beautiful about biomimicry as well, that it really showcases the possibility of what can be done. And when people kind of get squiggly about things that, oh, we couldn't possibly, it's like, you can't even fathom how much technology and development has gone in to just us being able to have this experience of me speaking to you on the other side of the planet. Yes, there's no real limit to what we can actually do, if we use our genius appropriately. So Beth, I've got 2 more questions for you, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm good. You tell me when to pick me up. I'm good.
Not at all. Preferably never, but we do need to make room. So we've got one from Lorenzo and then one from, is it Dana? Great. So Lorenzo's question's in the chat. I'm going to ask his first, which is, what do you think about mycelium doing similarly to the bacteria on the textiles, such as Novabiome is doing?
Yeah, great. That was actually the very first place that we started. Was one of the people on the team was Libby Summer, who worked at Bolt Threads. And one of my very first questions to Libby was, can you take rayon and can we basically treat it with something and then let that become the feedstock instead of using essentially cellulosic wood chips and dust for your feedstock? what Bolt Threads is a mycelium based now textile company. So it's definitely possible. We didn't run any in the first round of pilots, and I'm hoping that in the next round this is what happens. We didn't run ultimately any mycelium tests, but there's really no reason, especially like EHAB from Biome, similar to NovaBiome, like they have trained their enzymes to eat even perfluorinated chemicals, and that was actually one of the pilots that we wanted to start as well, was actually to train it to eat outdoor wear, like something really gross, and watch these enzymes and ultimately mycelium co-opt it as food. You do have to train them that way, and that training might be a euphemism for genetically modifying. It could also be, quote, directed evolution, like you only take the mycelium that will eat the nylon or that will eat the perfluorinated rain jacket, etc. There might be some ethical questions there that are really worth examining before we go down that path, but we definitely thought about it. It's a great idea. You know the answer, right? The answer to everything is fermentation and mycelium. Like, that's how we're going to make a better world.
I mean, it's how we made beer and good cheese. So to be honest,
exactly. Like, we have the blueprints.
We've got
for a better life. For a better life.
Amazing. Thank you. Dana, over to you with your question.
Hi, Beth. Thank you so much for being here. It's really an inspiration to hear from you. I'm actually working right now on an EU project called Nature for Nature with 8 other doctoral researchers. We're trying to build a nature-inspired microplastic filtration device for different applications depending on which parameters we can realize. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think the challenge for us is that, like, when it comes to additive manufacturing, like, let's say in our consortium, Fraunhofer and their expertise really lies in like metals, for example, right? And of course, some of the 3D prints that we've already come up with just in terms of models have been, of course, made of plastics and other things. So it's like, for the limited resources that we have, like, how can we maybe access other stakeholders that are in the EU or even outside of, to try to access some of these like chitin-based or cellulose-based or other types of materials to maybe try out our prototype, for example?
Great question, and really pertinent. So Fraunhofer was our partner. Yeah, and there's like, my colleague would like to present. Come here. Fraunhofer there's various acronyms within the departments. And it'll be in the resources section of D4T on the Biomimicry website. But you can read the report and the different groups that we work with. Again, circle economy was sort of our, Fraunhofer was actually, we had 3 pilots. We had one in Ghana, we had one in Rotterdam, and then we had one in Germany. And Fraunhofer was obviously the German pilot. So, but either way, happy to, that content is all up there. And you should feel free, if you can't find it, ping me directly through LinkedIn or ping Jess, and I'll get you to the people that we spoke to. Or again, just ask people at the Institute and they can direct you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good luck. Thank you for doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Amazing. Beth, before we go anywhere else, Ali, I just want to check, are the breakout rooms good to go? This one.
You'll have to give me just 2 minutes.
Cool. Alrighty. Okay. Well then, I think in that time, I would love to ask just Deb. Sorry, Livia, would you mind popping your question in the chat, please? And then we'll ask Beth, to get back to you there. Beth, I would love to just give you the floor as well and just say, is there anything else that you would like to share or to ask of us? And is there anything that we can do to support this whole amazing transformation?
Yeah. Like I said, there is such a strong force around recycling plastic. I was recently asked to give another talk, and the organizer of the talk knew what I was going to say. He's like, Beth, I just want to be really clear, plastic's not going anywhere. And I was like, Dave, you shouldn't have asked me to join your talk then, because like, it was so antagonistic, and but said in I think in this kind of way, like you know, you naive person, how could you think that? And so it's going to take multiple fronts of bravery, like I mentioned before. I think that pointing back to alternatives, that's why, I mean, the reason that we like really cultivated and Jared has done such a great job on the innovation program of like really stewarding like proof points. Like all we ever really want to do is show you like there is an alternative out there. And now that there is literally a global network of bio-inspired design, biomimics, etc., that is, you know, I think the Hive is the place now. Ask Nature Hive is that place to join. So I would just really encourage us all to have like 3 talking points. When somebody says, "Oh, you can never get rid of plastic," point to the sparkles, right? Point to the Surpifies. Point to the actually, I don't know what Amphico uses for their core material, but Amphico is one of the, they have a product called Amphitex, and they're using like the springtail design to do like repellent surfaces. I don't know if it's, I don't really know what their core material is though, but they are applying biomimetic structures to, and it is a mono material. So from a recyclability perspective, it is definitely better. So yeah, I just think have the examples at the ready. We're all ambassadors in this work. We all have to do our part. This is not about, you know, just one entity trying to lead it. This has to happen quickly.
Amazing. Completely agree. As we always like to say, you know, biomimicry is a team sport. And it really is. Everybody from the makers to the users to the wearers to the everything. You know, we really are all in this together. And I think that's the beauty of biomimicry, is that we all actually have a part to play. So Beth, thank you so much for being here, for sharing this wisdom with
guys.
It's been
I greatly enjoyed it. It was really fun to be with you. Lots of love to you and Learn Biomimicry team. And yeah, I'm going to take off. Feel free to message Jess and Alistair if you need to reach me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Beth.
Bye, guys.
Cheers.